Because of the controversial nature of Disgraced's portrayal of Islamic Americans, LA TheaterWorks held panel discussions following performances in Los Angeles in April 2018. We heard a remarkable range of opinions about the play from our distinguished guests. Shafiqa Amadi is an associate professor of clinical education at the Rossier School of Education and co-director of the Center for Education, Identity, and Social Justice at USC. Sue Obeidi is the director of the Muslim Public Affairs Council's Hollywood Bureau. She works with studio executives, producers, directors, and writers to create authentic, accurate, and humanizing portrayals of Islam and of Muslims in film, television, and on digital platforms. Rabbi Sarah Bassin is an associate rabbi at Temple Emmanuel of Beverly Hills. Prior to joining Temple Emmanuel, Rabbi Bassin served as executive director of LA-based NewGround, a Muslim-Jewish partnership for change. Dr. Mo Shuka is a member of the Abraham Society, whose broad mission is to foster relationships of trust, understanding, and mutual interest among individuals residing in Southern California who are of Jewish, Muslim, and Christian backgrounds. ML Tennis is also a member of the Abraham Society. Before moving to the U.S., she was a leading journalist in Turkey and was awarded Best Journalist of the Year by the Turkish Journalists Association for her interview with Benazir Bhutto, former Prime Minister of Pakistan. I'd like to begin by asking each of you about your own first impressions of Disgraced. What were your thoughts upon seeing it for the first time, and what kinds of questions did the play raise for you? Shafiqa?
I thought it was very interesting. So the play is interesting. It's well written. Unfortunately, it is pretty problematic. It's very, and actually in the play, the word Orientalist comes up too. So what's interesting is that if we had other plays or in the media, in movies, in theater, on TV shows, other characters, strong Muslim characters that are from a positive perspective, we could certainly reconcile that and say, oh, Muslims are not just put in this monolithic little box that we have as these are all Muslims are the same, right? So regardless of how much Amir in this play has assimilated, has given up his religion, has done so many things to become part of this culture, part of this country, right? Regardless of how much he has tried, at the end, he still goes back to his tribe, right? It's a very tribal identity that it's portrayed. That's really, it's again, it's not checked. It's not very nuanced. It's not, questioned, right? So as an academic, I love talking about these issues, to be able to talk about it as well as to be able to hear different perspectives. And unfortunately, in this play, that was not provided. It's very, you are eventually going to go back to where you came from. You're still going to be uncivilized, regardless of how much you have given up and how much you have assimilated and how much money you have, how much education and Western education in this country that you have received. So unfortunately, there's not much room for most Muslims that come from various perspectives. Now, let's even think about the fact that Muslims come from how many different countries? We're very diverse linguistically. We're extremely diverse traditionally, culturally, as well as religiously. And none of that was presented because at the end of the day, if you're Muslim, you're still going to be Muslim, and you still may not like the Western ideals. It pretty much reminds me of Samuel Huntington's work of The Clash of Civilizations, that regardless of how much Muslims try, they're not going to be civilized. And the Muslim ideal or the Orient that the Orientalists talk about, it's still the same today.
Rabbi Bassin?
So first of all, as a rabbi, I'm clearly not a Muslim. So I can come at this from the perspective of knowing a lot of Muslims and the communal work that I've done, but not from speaking of firsthand experience. I can speak as a minority, and some of the themes that really stuck out to me from the play were about the burden imposed on the Muslim characters of representing, even when they didn't identify, even when they didn't want to, that was just the public perception of who they were, and thus there was a burden on them that they were representing the entirety of their background, their people in that moment. And I think that that's something a lot of minorities in the United States can relate to. I thought the theme about taking on the identity of the other was really interesting, that you saw with Emily and her interest around Islam, that you saw with Amir, right, of wanting to assimilate and to blend in and to shed his heritage, and then of Abe Hussein, right, of going back and forth between the two, and I think that's something a lot of minorities navigate as well. And then the third, and I think this is the most salient for me right now at this particular historic moment, is the idea of scratching beneath the surface, and what happens when you get beyond that initial layer of polite conversation after a couple of scotches, and revealing those prejudices that all of us carry about the other, and how those can surface in ways that are really problematic when we don't have constructive forums to talk about it.
Sue?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for the invitation to LA Theater Works, to Devin and you, Susan. I heard a lot about the play before I saw the play. My co-workers, Aziza Hassan and Nadina Lekovich, actually participated in these talkbacks about 3 years ago. And I heard that the play was very problematic, that it was very engaging, well performed, but a little bit problematic. And I was very eager to see it and read it when you sent me the script. And I totally agreed that, it was very engaging, but it wasn't as nuanced as I would have hoped it would have been. There were some lines and some scenes that were very difficult to watch and listen to and read when I read the play. A lot of the inaccuracies about Islam went unchecked. For example, just off the top of my head, the issue of taqiyya, which is denying your faith, is in the Quran, but it's only an exception in persecution. So someone who, is being persecuted, tortured, and denies their faith, there is an exception where it is okay, but that's under circumstances that are not innate to someone living in Manhattan, for example. It's not an issue of assimilation. It's an issue of being persecuted. And so that is, for example, an inaccuracy that just went totally unchecked because there wasn't a Muslim character, a strong Muslim character that could kind of push back on that inaccuracy. Another one is the apostate dialogue, where if someone leaves Islam, that it's punishable by death. It's not as clear, it's not black and white as the dialogue made it seem. One who denounces their faith is not celebrated. For sure, it is looked down upon. However, there is no punishment or punishment by death associated with that. It's an issue of religious freedom and human rights. In the Quran, it says that there's no compulsion in religion, and that's true for Muslim and non-Muslim. So those are some, things that just totally just went unchecked because there was no balance. There's no Muslim character or one with a strong identification to say, no, that's not the case.
Dr. Shuka?
Yeah, I had heard that there was some concern about it being anti-Islamic or against the, I didn't perceive it that way. I thought it was written brilliantly, and I thought it was portrayed brilliantly. And I liked the way that they presented Amir as a human. He's a person that has his own struggles. And one of them is that he's, distancing himself from his heritage, which he has every right to do. But I was thinking that the reason for that is the reason he would walk away from anything, it's maybe the premise and the way that he learned about Islam, in that there was prejudice and bias in that premise, and there was a loss of humanity. Like when his mom found out that about his crush, how she reacted to it. He had the crush on the Jewish girl, and how he, in turn, reacted to it, which is, they lost their humanity in that. And I don't think any of the major religions preach that loss of humanity. And that's why it becomes easy to distance yourself from any philosophy that does that.
ML, your thoughts?
It was very brave, very bold, exciting, and I am very happy to have this kind of play in the United States of America, and people can talk about this kind of subjects. It wasn't very easy to talk about it before, so I am very happy to see that on the stage, that people can talk about this. And especially, I cannot relate, but I can understand Amir very well, because I am Muslim. And there are so many people around me, like going through those kind of like dealing with inner self and their individual identity. It is difficult to be immigrant and being Muslim, especially after September 11. I was in my tennis club. I was playing with those people like for so many years, and they start making joke to me like, Emmanuel, what is in your backpack? Your tennis bag or your bomb bag? Like, first I was laughing, smiling, tried to be like nice, and then a couple days later I couldn't handle that. Until those dates, when they ask me like if I am Muslim, or when that subject comes up, I was saying, yeah, I was raised Muslim, but I don't practice, which is true. My family is very liberal family. In our identification in Turkey, it says like Muslim, your religion is there. 99% of Turkey is Muslim. But I didn't grow up like that, so I was like happily saying that. But after September 11, when I start seeing like all that reaction to the Muslim and how Islamophobia was like growing so fast, I start being like more defensive. Like when they ask me, I start saying, yes, I am Muslim.
One of the play's themes is the notion that people's religious views are fundamentally shaped by their earliest memories. Through the play, we see how people carry these ideas into adulthood, even as they fight against them, as we've just discussed. How do you make space for dissent, particularly around these challenging but valid experiences, when presenting a whole picture of Islam?
And it's true. I mean, we carry from our beliefs from childhood into our adulthood, and then we have to decipher between culture and religion, what our parents taught us and what our what is actually theology. I was talking to a coworker on Tuesday, and we were just talking about things our parents would say to us, and her mother or in her family told her that it's not good to go out after sunset prayers because the bad spirits are out. And sunset prayers, there's 5 daily prayers. The 4th one is right before dark. And so she grew up believing that it's better not to go out in the dark at night because there's evil spirits out. Now, I'm sure as an adult, she realized that it was just a way of her mom and dad keeping her inside the house, at night, because that's not true. So it is an issue, but it's not a Muslim issue. I mean, I'm sure everybody, every culture. I mean, there's just some things that are, your parents told you that later in adulthood you find out was not true, or a myth, or a cult, culture. And it's up to us as far as, when we're an adult, to break down those walls and to learn more about, what is culture and what is faith and what is in the text. As far as dissent, look, the truth is there is no compulsion in religion. That's the truth. And if someone wants to leave Islam, let them leave. The issue is what they do with the information and how they continue living. With Amir, he left his faith, adopted the American lifestyle as if being an American was different than being a Muslim. Amir just didn't get it. He didn't understand that being an American and being a Muslim are very much compatible. You're not one or the other. You can be great at both. The Quran doesn't contradict the Constitution, and the Constitution doesn't contradict the Quran. So with regards to dissent, fine, no problem. But if you're going to leave a faith, leave it. And if you're going to start giving out information, at least let it be accurate information.
So it's interesting, right? I mean, Sue mentioned that we have to differentiate. We can't just say that just because something that he was saying, as someone who is an apostate, has given up religion, but yet he has very strong ideas about what Islam is, what Islam should be. We do have to think about how do we differentiate between theology and culture, tradition, right? I mean, we're not going to hold every Christian responsible for the terrorist acts that they're committing here in the U.S., right? White men who have committed more terrorist attacks here in the U.S. Within the last year, right? But we don't stereotype and take that to the whole level of all Christians are terrorists, right? So those are the things that even though it may come from ideology, white supremacy may come from some kind of ideology that some people may think that this is based on my religion, that room is not given to Muslims, right? So for Muslims, one person does something, that is on all of us. It's generalized, we're stereotyped as the other, as the ones who are just not civilized, who are against Western values. So I think that's where we have to really differentiate between theology and tradition and how you grow up. I'm sure many of us can think about, how we grew up and what our parents told us. And his anecdote about his mom is interesting. But our parents have told us some stuff that may or may not go with what our religion has taught us or our, traditions. So that's where the interesting part is that I'm sure as the audience we can distinguish that. But when you have a play like this, and it goes unchecked, and it's produced and reproduced often, so then where are those counter narratives to show what the rest of the Muslim world or other Muslim traditions are?
Disgraced was the most produced play in the United States during the 2015-2016 season, and a number of companies organized talkbacks, such as this one, around their performances. Do you think Disgraced is a play that ought to be contextualized for its audience? Rabbi?
Yeah, I think it's really important. In talking with some of my Muslim friends before coming to the play, there was some level of discomfort about my participation in this forum and being associated with this as somebody who was connected to and seen as hopefully an ally in the Muslim community. I can't blame the playwright for writing what was in him. That's 100% his prerogative, and every artist has their integrity. But I think that there's something that's really interesting when you think about it, not about the playwright, but you think about it as, why is this the play that captured our American consciousness, right? Why is this the story about American Islam that audiences were most drawn to seeing? And I think that there's something important that it holds a mirror up to us, that these are the questions that maybe we're still asking. Maybe there are prejudices or discomforts that we don't know how else to face. And so I do think that there's something significant that this is the story that is rising to the surface, and that it's really important to bring a variety of voices, Muslim voices, and I guess mine, but Muslim voices to be able to contextualize it.
How do you find yourselves contending with the kinds of opinions expressed in this play, even if not always so explosively or so explosively? What tools have you developed to help people learn to talk to and not past one another? Rabbi?
It's always important for me to remember that when I'm facing somebody who has perspectives that I would perceive to be Islamophobic or perceive to be as anti-Semitic, that it's not rooted in hate as much it is fear. If they're willing to talk to me, then it's probably more rooted in fear than it is in hate. And that's what you have to speak to, is that fear. And it's personal stories, not statistics. It's not pointing to different things in the news. It's the personal stories about the people that I know that have transformed how other people think. I once had somebody who came up to me and said, I am Islamophobic. And when I hear Islamophobic, I hear I am racist, right? But this person was saying it as I have fear of Muslims because one of that person's friends died on 9/11. That is her experience of Muslims. So the only thing that I can do is to complicate that narrative with experiences that I've had of Muslims who in no way sympathize or embody or celebrate or take pride in what happened, but who are Americans just like you and me, maybe at a different stage in their family's immigration story. But that's a narrative that they can relate to, and that it starts to paint a little bit more texture to a one-dimensional view of the community.
Mo and Emil, you are both part of an initiative called the Abraham Society. Can you tell us a bit about the society and the work you're doing in the community? Mo?
The idea with the Abraham Society is that it's meant to foster greater trust, understanding, and mutual interest between the three groups. So we're looking to be active in projects that allow the three groups to interact together in a positive and meaningful way.
Yeah, I think most important thing like Abraham Society is doing, making all these communities get together. I think for communities to understand each other, the most important way to go that point is like knowing each other. When you don't have so much information about other people or unknown things, it's scary, and so you keep yourself away. So as much as you get closer to the thing that you don't know, you are not so familiar, you understand, and as you understand, it's get better relationship and more peaceful world.
I mean, when you hear people talk past one another, you hear something like the scene, which was quite dramatic, obviously, it's a play, but that scene in which the two men go at each other. Have you experienced scenes like that? Have you been witness to that sort of thing? Emil?
Actually, not that explosively, but I had a couple of experiences like that. Actually, my family, we are in my immediate family. We have Jewish, we have Christian, and we are Muslim. So most of the time we have in the dinner table, like those kind of conversation opens, like very peacefully we talk. Some people might get a little bit angry, but like just controlling that. But I think it was about 10 years ago, my best friend's husband, they were older than me. I thought him as my father. He was like my father figure. Very well educated, airplane engineer, American guy. and wife was Japanese, my very good friend, my best friend. That time, something happened. I think it was in Iraq. Like they flushed Quran Karim on the toilet. That scandal was going on, and in same time, American Post Office decided to print some stamp celebrating Muslim holiday. I don't remember which one it was, Ramadan or Qurban, something like that. And a lot of American was against that. Like, these people are like terrorists, and why are we like printing stamp for their celebration? So my friend's husband wrote this email for so many people, and he added me in that list too. It was very hateful, very angry. He knew I was Muslim, and we knew each other for a long time, and he was able to send it because he never think like I was really Muslim, because I am friend with them. I live different than what is in what in their image as a Muslim people live. Maybe that's why. But it really made me angry. I found it very disrespectful to my religion and to me. And at that time, I thought about that question. How should I approach that? I talked to my friend. She was very upset about it, too. She said, Emma, sit down and talk to him. But give yourself a couple days. So I gave myself a couple days, and I went to their house having tea together. And I opened the subject, and I said, I really felt like offended. Like, you know I am Muslim. When we have dinner with you, when you want to do prayer before the dinner, they always do that. Very conservative family. I always hold the hand and I go with them. And I said, I never ask you to do anything in my religion, but you did this to me. I came to church many times with you, just to be with you, listen to Sunday prayers, preach. I really like to listen to those, but not that much. You cannot insult my religion like this. You have to respect mine too. And I feel hurt. When I say like I feel hurt and my heart is broken, his face changed. And he said, I never think like that. I thought like, I didn't even consider you as a Muslim because you are very modern, very liberal. I said, no, I am still Muslim. So I think communication is the key, like in everything else. So this is my experience. I think communication, talking, and listening other people is so important. Whatever, even though they say with anger, listen them. Try to understand what are they saying instead of just try to defend yourself. Try to understand what they say. I think most important thing.
Well, on that note, it was a very interesting discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you.